Hi everyone, my name is Yulia Pavlova and I'm a producer at Strelka Institute here in Moscow. Welcome everybody who's watching us on YouTube, Facebook and Vkontakte. Today I would like to welcome Laura Coombs, who's the speaker of our public program Strelka 2020 Live. Laura is a designer based in New York, specializing in editorial and exhibition design for artists and contemporary cultural institutions, and teaching graphic design at Princeton University. She is also the head of design at the New Museum of Contemporary Art in New York. Today, Laura is going to talk about the power of book design and how a book's exterior mirrors its content. There will be a Q&A session after the lecture, so please do not hesitate to post your questions in the comment section, and I will pass them on to Laura. The lecture will be in English with a simultaneous translation into Russian. The Russian translation can be found on Vkontakte and Russian Facebook. English version is available on our YouTube and English Facebook. So please have a great time watching, and I shall pass the word to Laura.
Thank you so much, Yulia. It's really, thank you for Strelka for inviting me. Thank you for everyone watching and listening. It's an honor to be here, and I wish I could be with you in Russia. As Yulia mentioned, today I'm going to talk about my publication practice especially, and I'm going to show you 5 books I've designed in the past few years. And I'd like to specifically talk about how books form themselves from their contents and how conversations, relationships, and ideas, and even architecture become reenacted through the pages of books. And actually, just a side note to introduce myself, I studied architecture before graphic design. So I was living in New York, working as an architect before doing graphic design. And so I think one thing you'll see is that I tend to interface with graphic design through materials. This quote is from a video by artist Oliver Lyric. And to me, it's sort of a starting point for kind of how I see my practice in some ways, where each book is sort of a citation and its source is kind of where it's coming from. And it's an object that by its very existence is formed by the situations and ideas of its author and collaborators. So in speaking about architecture specifically, I think books are a natural extension of architecture, as architecture is deeply invested in not only written discourse, but speculative projects, representation of speculative futures, and fictions. So the first book I'm going to talk about is from 2017. It's titled 81 through 1 through 81. And this is a book of my own formal and material research completed over 2 years. It was my postgraduate research at the Yale School of Art. The reason for the numerical counting down and then up is the book's organization. It's essentially a numerical index that goes in 2 different directions. So the front portion, 81 through 1, is counts down through 81 projects through their images that were all a part of my body of research. And then in the back of the book, it counts up through those same projects 1 through 81 through textual citation and writing. And so this is a sort of long, sprawling tour through the contents of the book and what I started with. And really my research was interested in a wide range of things. And these were really my first experiments in graphic design. So the format was video, render, newspaper, book, website, printed card, magazine. It's sort of like every possible format that you could possibly imagine. Even including this as like a student publication. The bottom left was like a laser show that we did for our collective exhibition. And then Also, I think it's important to note that during my postgraduate studies at Yale, I was making books as an extension of my thinking. So it was almost like as I was thinking about any subject matter, it would formulate itself into a book just as a matter of practice. And so maybe while I was there in the span of 2 years, maybe I made 30 or so books. So given all of that content that was to be in the book, the 81 projects, when I started to design the book, I looked first at the materiality, again, maybe sort of because of my background in architecture. And I wondered how I could bring all the work together in a material sense. So accounting for all the work in an indexical way, the top 4 most used color in all of my work are neon blue, neon pink, metallic gold, and black. So I decided to first print all of the work in the book in those 4 colors. And then I also made a decision about all the physical printed works like books, flyers, tickets were printed at 100% scale. So then that determined the scale of this book, is that it would be just big enough to contain all of the work that I had made. And this is the back of the book, where each project is recorded in detail, including all possible metadata. So reference books, citation sources, collaborators, research, memories, anecdotes, notes, conversation. Any work that contained video or audio was transcribed so the sounds were represented as written language. And works can appear both whole and part, deconstructed and recombined. Pictured here, gold spreads combining parts and pieces of work. On the left, rendered flowers from a website with half of a book. And on the right, animation stills with 3D models extracted from another video. In the end, the book was a standard paperback catalog, but then the edges were gilded. So gold, remember, was an indexical material reflecting my heavy usage in my projects or in my research in which this book was representing. But I think it's interesting to note that this precious metal has been used for centuries in bookmaking, and usually to coat outer pages of illuminated manuscripts. And it's strikingly beautiful, but has a utilitarian purpose. It protects pages from yellowing and humidity. It prolongs the life of a book as an archival object. So the second publication I'd like to share with you is from 2018. This publication was for an exhibition at the New Museum of Contemporary Art in New York entitled Nathaniel Meller's Progressive Rocks. So these images I'm showing you to help you understand the environment of the exhibition. The exhibition contained, on the left, this animatronic egg that was presiding over this sort of dead body with a cardboard box for a head. In the middle was a film of a Neanderthal, like an ancient human skydiving. And then on the right was a work of art that was a sponge-faced skeleton. And so the exhibition had these sort of like raw, silly, this sort of raw, silly atmosphere, and also this sort of visceral, disgusting sort of features. Like there was this animatronic head in the corner that was expelling fluid through its mouth into this bucket every 30 seconds or a minute. So a theme in the artist's work was that things that seem stupid are actually intellectual. And a reoccurring character in the works is the Neanderthal, a caveman-like figure who Mellers uses not as a stupid caveman, but as a scholarly figure. For this reason, we agreed typography throughout the publication should be at once elegant but playful, keeping in mind a contrast between sophistication and being amateur. So on the exterior, we used an elegant stone-carved rock chisel typeface. However, the letter O's are rotating sequentially as an inside joke that they're rocks and that they're progressing by rotating sequentially more and more each time one appears. So the O's are literally progressive rocks. And the interior is set in Arial rounded bold, which is a system font considered to be unsophisticated and available on most computers. The map of the exhibition included oversized and overly detailed drawings of the artworks for only consisting of one room with 11 works. Mellers and I wanted to create an amusement park map feel, suggesting the works were not only artworks, but entertaining attractions. In the printing, we used a neon green color mixture that is similar to that disturbing greenish visceral expulsion of his animatronic character in the corner, that guy vomiting into the bucket in the corner. So we decided, since the exhibition was permeated with this disturbing sound of a creature expelling greenish fluid each minute, that we would dip the publication in green fluid as well. So with our printer, we created a custom 4-color neon ink mixture, and that's what you see here as the green color. And it's important to understand that the exhibition was in the dark, so the only light came from a few spotlights and video screens. Because the publication was printed in neon ink, it glowed in the dark. This provided a useful way to read it while inside the exhibition. And without neon colors, reading would not have been possible inside of the exhibition. So this neon was a cool effect, but it tied into the materiality of the exhibition itself. And it also allowed for accessibility of visitors inside the museum reading this. The artist partner wore a matching shirt to the opening, which I found really endearing. And the artist intended another meaning for the exhibition title, Progressive Rocks. He envisioned progressive rocks could also be a rock concert, and the phrase progressive rocks could also mean progressive is cool. Talking about these layers of meaning in the exhibition title, we decided to reform the exhibition into a rock concert tour t-shirt. All the works in the exhibition are stops on the tour. Now suddenly the exhibition was reenacted as traveling band merchandise. So these are co-curators on the exhibition in the park next to the museum. The third book I'd like to share with you is from 2019. This is a catalog for the New Museum of Contemporary Art. The exhibition for the artist Nari Ward was titled We the People. This is an exhibition view inside the new museum. Notice the giant copper plate work on the upper left. This is a work entitled Breathing Panel Oriented Center. This is a close-up view of this work. And it's very large. It's like 2.5 by 3 meters. And it weighs, it's very, very, very heavy. They actually had to add structure to the museum walls to be able to mount this artwork on the wall. So the work is composed of a giant copper sheet, copper nails, and darkening patina. Nari Ward's punctured geometric patterns in the panel reference traditional Congolese cosmograms, an ancient prayer symbol that represents the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. He encountered this symbol during a visit to the first African Baptist church in Savannah, Georgia, which was part of the Underground Railroad in the United States and instrumental as a place for safety for slaves seeking freedom. Holes of similar patterns were cut in the floorboards of the church to allow Black Americans to hide underneath the floor, and at the same time to breathe as they remained hidden. The scuff marks that appear on the surface of this work are footsteps, suggesting the steps of those who walked on the church floor. So this work to me has a lot of meaning, and it's very spiritual and extremely meaningful. And in a very, very humble way, I took on that work for the form of the book. So the history of the copper plate was the primary focus for the book, just to preserve that history. The book is designed exactly as a copper plate and designed to be an object appreciated from the exterior as a representation of this work. So what we did was we took the image of the artwork and we selected the copper from the image, and then we took everything else away, and then we printed the copper on the cover of the book in copper metallic ink. The book is designed as an object that doesn't necessarily have to be opened. One intention behind this is an experience I had while working at the New Museum while being at a trustee's house. This trustee had piles of catalogs stacked on tables, and it was clear that many of them hadn't been opened for several years. I thought of this future for this book, and I thought, I hope that people would have it and enjoy it. But worst case scenario, if someone kept it on a table, because it's printed on all sides, it would still read as the copper plate. So I think in that way, it became crucial to me to make it a full object. So the image extends on all sides. We printed the edges, and the edges are actually printed in two colors, black and copper ink. Yeah, so that it is a total object. Beyond the copper plate works, though, Nari Ward, the artist, is known for using found objects in his artwork. And especially, he's known for working in his neighborhood of Harlem in New York City. Nari's work also contains towers and vertical structures and references to sacred religious spaces. The interior typesetting of the book takes its cues from proportions of sacred texts, referencing biblical texts in its harsh justification. The page numbers are stacked on one side to reference his practice of working additively with found materials and things that have components, and the font used is Arial, which is found regularly on local business signage in Harlem. The only rule for image layout is that the images would max themselves out on the page within margins. And the caption text is the same size as the essay text previously, which is a really subtle gesture. But to me, this suggests that the work's titles, materials, and how they're constructed are equally as important as a critical text written by a curator. So again, like another really subtle way to honor Nari and his work and his use of materials. And this is the final catalog again. The fourth book I'd like to share with you is from this last fall, 2019. This is a book I designed called Signal Image Architecture by John May. John May is the director of the Master of Design program at the Harvard GSD. The book is about images. Images, John May argues, do not begin and never end. We are in a never-ending expanse of pixels, which is now also how architecture is created through digital image drawing and not drawing anymore. It's all imaging. For the book, the cover image is hot stamped with iridescent film. Iridescence as a material also has no beginning and no end. It is all colors and no colors simultaneously and indefinitely. The word architecture on the cover has been imaged or rastered repeatedly, transforming it into a low-resolution version of itself, or letters made from big, oversized pixels. This is the typographic expression of architecture after imaging, which is a phrase inside the book. The book details the difference between drawing, photography, and imaging, pointing to one of the first images ever seen as John Logie Baird's moving television image portrait of Oliver Hutchinson in 1926. And that's the image you see on the right. The idea of images moving and being non-static will play out through the rest of the book. So the image on the right is the first television image portrait on record. This is an image of a press sheet for this book, showing how the pages are laid out next to one another for this set of 8 pages. So in general, books are printed as large press sheets, usually 8 pages on front and back, yielding a book signature of 16 pages typically, although there's many other multiples of pages that you could have in a signature. But typically it's 8 over 8 to yield a 16-page signature. So to me, when thinking about what is the largest image of the book, I thought the press sheet is the largest image. So I laid out the images in the book on the press sheet rather than confined to specific pages. As a consequence, they overlap onto multiple pages. And by this fact, they appear 2 places or pages at once inside the book. So notice the image in the lower left that extends from page 88 to 89. This is what it looks like in the book, extending from 88 to 89. Here's another example of an image reappearing and disappearing. This example again on the same spread, but starting in one place and ending before it started. Here, a small portion of an image appears from 8 pages before into a new page with a new image. So images also start to combine within the book. And also here you can see another very subtle design decision employed throughout the book. So the spread on the left is the end of the chapter, and spread on the right is the beginning of the chapter. On the left, the chapter ends with 3 lines of white space below. On the right, the chapter begins with 3 lines of text at the bottom. So each new chapter begins where the other left off. This is in reference to the idea of signaling in the title, Signal Image Architecture. The chapters signal to each other where to begin. There is a very small image index, which is the only space in the book where you can view each image in its entirety. However, they're very tiny. Depending on the light source, the book wavers between appearing black and white and appearing fully iridescent. The iridescent pattern that spans the entire folded cover is one image enlarged hundreds of times. And actually, it's at first television image from 1926. The same image is located on the flap, and you can see this on the left side of this photograph. This image on the cover flap is actually the full-scale original TV image from 1926. The first image produced, again, by John Logie Baird, and it's very, very small, only 5 by 7 centimeters. And placing it on the flap like this underneath John May's biography suggests that it's actually John May's portrait. This is a convention of normal American mass market paperback books, and it was fun to suggest that this might be the portrait of the author. The fifth book I'd like to share with you has not been released yet. So this is maybe the first time it's being shown. It will be released this month in September 2020. This book is entitled Superpowers of Scale by Andre Hacke and the Office for Political Innovation. Hacke is director of the IMARC II program at Columbia Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. The book Superpowers of Scale is overflowing with ideas, but one is about scale. What can be revealed by scaling up or down within any context? What political or social systems can be revealed? On the left, we see NASA's first image of Earth, called the blue marble, one of the first holistic images of our spherical world in the universe. On the right, a similar image is being constructed for Charles and Ray Eames' famous film, Powers of 10, from 1977. Zooming out from the making, we see the photographer and understand the point of view and system of construction. Likely within his lens frame is an approximation of the blue marble image. And this sort of synthesizes, in a way, what's happening in this book, where Hacke is an incredible expert on zooming in and out of architectural infrastructures and revealing the politics and the politics at play and allowing for diversity to enter in. Superpowers of Scale contains the world of Andre Hacke's architectural practice, the Office for Political Innovation. By scaling or zooming in within each chapter of the book, we find ourselves again and again aware of all the politics around us, how things are constructed, how we carefully scale in and scale out, revealing beautiful diversity of the world through an empathetic scalar lens. So the cover kind of shows the structure of the book. The book has 12 chapters. Each chapter on the cover has its own frame, suggesting what human dramas may lie within. Each chapter feels like a theatrical play, other times like watching TV, and often surprisingly tender and inclusive towards architecture and expanding its potential. So how does scale, or the idea of scaling in and out, play out in the book design? First, there's a system of images. Images scale up from start to finish of each chapter, starting small and ending large. So this is scale 1. Research images in the text are the smallest images, almost thumbnails. The second scale, the documentation scale, are architectural documentation. These images are the size of snapshots or medium-sized. Scale 3, images of architectural interventions begin at medium size, a quarter of the spread each. Scale 4, architectural interventions become maximum size to be fully immersive and experiential. We come as close as we can to inhabiting the work. Scale 5. Just like the universe, as soon as you think you have reached a singular maximum scale, we enter into a new galaxy. Scale 5 shows the frames and narrative sequences of works in their total duration. Scale 6. We see all the stars from all the works together. Each character, actor, historian, or player within all the chapters of the book come into focus together. There's another system at play. That was the system for images. The system for text is the same, but inverted. The text follows a scalar relationship that starts giant and scales down to normal reading size. Scale 1 and 2, giant 600%, or 12-point text at 600%, and 12-point text at 200%. Chapters begin in black, like the beginning of a play when the theater is dark and everyone's waiting for the performance to begin. The type is giant, like opening credits in a movie. And it's important to note here that I used the bookmaking typesetting software InDesign, and all of the type throughout the entire book is 12-point. The way that it's looking bigger or smaller is through programming it to scale from page to page. So illustrators, this is 12-point type, but it's like it's simulating a magnifying glass over it. So we start here, the biggest, 600%, then 200%. Then we go into the text and we change to black text on white. We're still at 200%. Scale 3 is 150%. We scale down slightly to continue the narrative in the text. And then scale 4, we scale down to 100%. So this is the real look of 12-point type in this book. And this is 100% scaled, read to the remainder of the chapter. Scale 5, the final tiniest scale only for footnotes and fine print. So this is a random assortment of spreads, kind of showing what happens when you combine those two image scalar system and textual scalar system. But then you get this diversity of layouts throughout the entire book. And there are hundreds and hundreds of actors, collaborators, subjects, and people who are participating in a part of these projects, which is really amazing. And there are other micro worlds within the book. These spreads are from chapter 9, called Fortified Homes, which traces the importing of exotic species of water lilies and male escorts from the Southern Hemisphere and it tracks their importation to the city of London. Because this world, this internet world of escorts and online relationships is screen-based, we use neon inks in this section again to give the impression of brightness of the screen space and the feeling of the internet. It's almost imperceptible, but when you encounter these pages in the physical book, there's an increased brightness that can't be replicated with standard printing alone. This is a view into checking the neon colors registration on press. Anytime you tinker with the colors in a printed volume, to be really, really vigilant about the registration when you go to press. Here's a close-up of the index of this book in the back. I love the index. I love indexes anyways, as you can see with the first book, but I love the index because it's a straightforward map of the entire contents of any book. And in this case, it's a lexicon. It's Hake's lexicon organized alphabetically. The theme of domesticity runs throughout the entire book. So here in 30 plus pages of metadata, we printed on floral embossed paper. This is a subtle nod to the book's ever-present themes of everyday vernacular beauty and individualized domesticity. The book shares the lives of many historical figures, actors, friends, historians, politicians, celebrities, villains, and all manner of human beings. A portion of the book is dedicated to treating the book again as a performance and revealing an encore section. Like when the cast of the play has left the stage, but the audience is clapping so loudly that they have to return to the stage to take a bow. We see each human being, animal, or character who appeared previously in the book again, all together to take a collective bow. Here is the author, Andre Hake, with the book. The cover is only printed in one color, actually, on the front side of the cover. But it has 24 holes in it, revealing colorful images below, in each corresponding to one of the 12 chapters in the book. Framed like this, again, we get a feeling of a performance, perhaps channels we can access on TV. The cover's sophistication on the exterior and the playfulness revealed on the interior is also a nod to Hake himself. In our meetings, he would often wear a plain sweater with a wild patterned shirt underneath. The cover is functioning the same way. This is a view of the first page and the last page with the cover unfolded so you can see the holes and the seamless grid of images. This is the seamless cover interior again, all together before cutting and folding into the final book. There are 3 images for every chapter of the book represented, and all the stories are allowed to live together in diverse community. Only the folding and the cutting of this into the final book cover gives us a frame to view them separately. The final page reveals the colophon, informing the reader that all type in the book is the same setting of 12 point over 14 point leading, but scaled to either 75, 100, 200, 250, 500, or 600%, depending on which page and context it shows up in. Here we see a view of the back cover interior flap with the author's biography, and we see a tiny image underneath. So actually, there aren't 24 holes, there are 25 holes. This is a detail of the back flap, a singular frame to frame the author's portrait, one final miniature performance, an encore to the performance. Jacques' architectural work asks us to look at multiple scales. The book is designed in the same way. There's a new layer of information discoverable at every scale of looking. Closing the book, we're back at the start. I had another thought as I was putting this together, that books are sequences of spaces. Those spaces are shaped by their ideas and content, but also the relationship between designer, editors, authors, and this whole human community of collaborators behind each publication. So thank you for coming along this journey to look at these 5 books. On the bottom right, actually, is another book I've just finished. It's also secret for now, but will be announced very soon. And this book is all about the color blue. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, Strelka. It's been an honor to be here with you.
Thank you, Laura, for letting us get a glimpse into your craft. Now on to the questions. We have a bunch. The first one, where do you get your inspiration from? Some designers really have to go outside, interact with an outside world one way or another. What advice would you give to people who in current reality are actually being confined to the 4 walls of their apartment?
Oh, like especially in the pandemic, it's very hard. I feel extremely sympathetic to that. I mean, I guess maybe this seems obvious, but um, I think it's interesting for me that I ended up designing books because I had never considered it before, but I had always grown up surrounded by books. In my parents' house at home, there's just rooms and rooms full of books. And so for me, whenever I want inspiration, um, I read a book. I also get a lot of get in my own work. I get most of my inspiration from the subject matter itself, from the people that I'm working with, and I'm kind of a really, really good detective and really, really interested in the people that I work with, and just really immerse myself in all of their ideas. Oh,
Sorry.
you okay?
Sorry. Thank you. Do you engage in art activism? If so, could you please tell us about it a bit more? And how does it work for you personally? Your job at an established cultural institution and being involved in political or social art activities?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's an entirely other lecture. So, one aspect of that is the new museum unionized last year. So, we formed a labor union, and I'm the graphic designer for the union. So, I did the graphic design for the union, all of our buttons and protest posters and internal communication. I also um, I also work with. I'm very lucky to work with uh, authors and makers and architects who are very socially conscious. So the blue book that's coming out, that's on the bottom right corner, that I'm not able to talk about yet. That is about the prison system in the United States, and it's it discusses like how the evolution of slavery and how that ended up as like the carceral system, and it talks about like abolishing the police state. It talks about the bias of technology against people of color. So I'm very um, I love working on books like this where the content is very um, it has high stakes and it's important. It's not just beautiful or decorative, but the message is also important. And I also feel that way with both Nari Ward's work, the Copper Catalog, and I also feel that way about Andre Haka's work, where Haka is really trying to like reveal a lot of um, faulty political structures within architecture to kind of bring about a more like beautiful and sort of diverse world. So I think it runs through in various ways, the activism part.
We've got a question which, well, I hope you will understand because I don't. Uh, can you update on your work within CSS? For me, it sounded like the birth of a musical supergroup back in the beginning of this year.
Oh wow! Thank you for thank you for whoever wrote that. Actually, CSS is meeting tomorrow, and we're working on a project together. And we're actually working on a couple of projects together. Actually, a few. One is a writing project that will be out before 2021. One is a graphic design work for UCLA in California. One is Mindy Sue and I are doing a workshop with Southland Institute in December. So everyone's welcome to sign up for that, I think, and it would be great to work with you. I mean, it's sad that it has to be virtual, but yeah, we're doing a lot of things. We're just not as visible as we imagined before COVID-19.
Thanks. because I literally have no idea what this was about, but I Google after the live stream. What book would you like to design which has been previously published?
Oh, wow. Like redesign it or, wow, that's so interesting. I don't know. Maybe this is bad, but I would take a crack at redesigning Bringhurst. What is it? Notes on Typographic Style, or like the iconic Bringhurst typography book. And Bringhurst is still alive, so that might be controversial.
We have a technical question of sorts. Could you explain how did you scale up and down the typefaces? Was it in another software than InDesign?
No, it's in InDesign. So one of my favorite things about working with InDesign is finding program hacks. So I can't remember what it's called, but if you go into your preferences, there's scaling preferences, and there's an option that you can toggle on or toggle off, and it's usually one way. But if you flip it the other way, when you scale a text box, the type actually scales with it. So it's just nothing's changed. It just looks bigger or smaller. It's really wild. It's just like the text box is a magnifying glass. So my only wish with that is that it would be obvious, or like more obvious how that's working. But yeah, it's actually very, very easy. And I'm drawing a blank. I wish I could open InDesign for you and look at the but I can I'll send it to Yulia, and maybe Yulia can send it to you.
Spreading the knowledge of hidden functions of InDesign. Is it possible to work on the book design while the materials for the book are still being prepared? Or is it a process of post-visualizing all the collected materials?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Is it possible to design a book while you... Sorry. Sorry. Is it possible to design a book while you don't have all the materials on hand and it's still in development? Or like, do you have to go and take interviews and meet with clients all together? Well, they have the complete brief, or it's possible when you have it partially?
Oh, yeah, that's a wonderful question. There's only one book in this set that I had all of the information up front. All of the other books, I had maybe 5%, 10% when we started. And in my own book, the first book I showed, I guess I did have everything, but I didn't have any client brief or anything like that. So actually, in my experience, it's more common than not to start the process and actually start designing without having a big picture of all of the content.
I think we've got the last question. Well, if anyone has anything else to ask, please go into the comment box. We have some time left. What will the books of the future look like? Will the print cease to exist eventually?
No, never. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know what they'll look like. I think what I love so much about books is how they can have so many different forms. I didn't show them here, but a lot of the books that I was working on as research for my postgraduate work were multiform, so they were all printed and web-based at the same time and video-based, and so they ran through they ran fluidly through multiple mediums. And I see that for the future as things just becoming more and more fluid, but I don't think the printed object will go away. I think it's almost sacred. Like there's so much reverence for them. Some of our most valuable objects as humanity are like some of the first printed books. So hopefully they don't go away.
Laura, thank you so much for the answers. That's it. Oh, no, wait. We've got the last one, I think. Why redesign Robert Brinkhurst? Please elaborate.
I don't know. Maybe I'm giving Robert a hard time. I don't know Robert Brinkhurst, but I think when I studied graphic design, that was the first book that I was given to learn about typography. And so I think there's this instinct that I want to rewrite all of the, maybe like male voices. Like I want to rewrite those voices in my own image, and I want, I want there to be more of those like standard academic texts that are written by, people of color and women of color. And so there's that impulse. As an educator, I think about that a lot. I want to see more things reimagined or rewritten or by different people. So yeah, I think that comes from that impulse, but probably I would do something more fun. Like, yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question. I'd have to think about it.
Well, thank you for the lecture and especially for your answers. Thank you everyone for watching us. The lecture will stay on YouTube and all Strelka social media. Please follow us there and check out strelka.com for more updates and events. Thanks for tuning in today and bye.